In the small town of Willow Creek, life moved at a slow pace. Everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. Nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, it was the kind of place where people liked to think nothing bad could ever happen. But for 14-year-old Mia, that wasn't entirely true. Mia was the quiet type. She didn't have many friends, but she didn't mind most days anyway. Her world revolved around her sketchbook, books borrowed from the library, and helping her mom around the house. Life wasn't easy for her family. Her dad worked long hours at the local factory, coming home too tired to do much more than eat dinner and watch TV before bed. Her mom had been sick for as long as Mia could remember, so Mia often found herself taking care of things at home while trying to keep up with schoolwork. It wasn't glamorous, but it was what she knew. At school, Mia blended into the background like wallpaper. She sat in the back of classrooms, doodling in the margins of her notebooks when lessons got boring. Teachers rarely called on her because she never raised her hand. The other kids? Well, they didn't seem to notice her much either. And honestly, that suited her just fine, at least until one particular girl decided otherwise. This girl was everything Mia wasn't: loud, confident, and always at the center of attention. She strutted through the hallways like she owned them, surrounded by a group of followers who laughed at every little joke or snide comment she made. To Mia, this girl seemed untouchable, a force of nature wrapped up in designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. Things started innocently enough. At first, it was just whispered comments here and there. Why does she even come to school? Someone would mutter loud enough for Mia to hear. Or, does she really think anyone cares about her dumb drawings? Mia tried not to let it bother her. After all, these were just words, right? Words couldn't hurt her if she didn't let them. But then came the notes. Slipped into her locker. During passing periods, they mocked her appearance, her hobbies, and even her family. One read, "No wonder no one talks to you." Another said, "Go back to wherever you came from." Each note felt like a tiny pebble being thrown at her, chipping away at the walls she'd built to protect herself. Still, Mia kept her head down. She told herself that ignoring it was the best way to handle it. If she didn't react, maybe they'd get bored and leave her alone. That's what her mom always said when things got tough. Sometimes silence is your strongest weapon. One day, though, something happened that changed everything. It was lunchtime, and Mia was sitting alone at her usual spot near the windows. She liked watching the trees sway in the breeze outside. It reminded her of how peaceful things used to feel before middle school became such a battlefield. As she picked at her sandwich, she heard laughter growing louder behind her. Without looking, she knew exactly who it belonged to. Suddenly, the entire cafeteria went quiet. Mia froze, her fork hovering mid-air. Slowly, she turned her head and saw the girl standing across the room, pointing a finger straight at her. With a smirk, the girl shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, "She doesn't belong here." The room erupted into giggles and whispers. Some kids looked uncomfortable, shifting awkwardly in their seats, while others openly stared at Mia, waiting to see how she'd react. For a moment, Mia felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled away. Her cheeks burned and tears pricked the corners of her eyes. But she refused to cry, not here, not now, not in front of everyone. Instead, she clenched her fists under the table, digging her nails into her palms until the sharp sting brought her back to reality. Deep inside, something stirred. A voice whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Asterisk, don't let them win." Asterisk. That afternoon, as Mia walked home from school, she replayed the scene over and over in her mind. Every time she thought about the girls' smug expression or the cruel laughter echoing off the cafeteria walls, her stomach twisted into knots. But mixed with the humiliation was something else, something new. Anger. Not just at the girl, but at herself for letting it go on for so long. When she got home, Mia locked herself in her room and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her dark hair hung limply around her face, and her shoulders slumped like she was carrying the weight of the world. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit how tired she was, tired of hiding, tired of pretending everything was okay, tired of feeling powerless. And yet, something inside her refused to give up completely. Maybe it was the memory of her mom telling her stories about overcoming hardships. Maybe it was the sketches scattered across her desk, each one proof that she had dreams bigger than this tiny town. Whatever it was, it sparked a tiny flame of determination deep within her chest. As Mia traced the outline of her reflection in the glass, she whispered to herself, "I'm not going to let her break me." Little did she know, those words marked the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The days that followed felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. The bullying didn't stop, it got worse. Notes continued to appear in Mia's locker, each one more cutting than the last. Once, someone poured soda all over her backpack, leaving it sticky and reeking of artificial sweetness for days. Her art projects disappeared from class without explanation, only to turn up later crumpled in the trash can outside the classroom. Every incident chipped away at her confidence, making her feel smaller and smaller with each passing day. At home, Mia tried to bury herself in her sketches, creating worlds where she could escape the pain. She drew forests so dense no one could find her, oceans so vast they swallowed everything whole, and skies filled with stars brighter than any reality she knew. But even her art couldn't shield her forever. One night, after another exhausting day, she sat staring at her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles hung under her eyes, and her shoulders slumped like they were carrying an invisible weight. For the first time, anger bubbled up inside her, not just at the girl who tormented her, but at herself for letting it go on for so long. Her breaking point came during gym class. It was supposed to be a normal day dodgeball, the usual chaos of kids shouting and laughing, and the faint smell of sweat lingering in the air. But when Mia went to grab a ball, she felt a sharp shove from behind. She stumbled forward, catching herself against the cold metal bleachers before she fell. Turning around, she saw the girl standing there, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. "You're nothing," the girl sneered, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. For a moment, Mia froze. The words hit her like a punch to the gut, knocking the breath out of her. But then something inside her shifted. Instead of walking away like she always did, she stood tall, looked the girl straight in the eye, and said firmly, "I'm done being your punching bag." The gym went silent. Even the teacher paused mid-whistle blow, glancing over curiously. The girl faltered for a split second, clearly surprised by Mia's response, but quickly recovered. With a laugh, she tossed her hair over her shoulder and walked off, calling out, "Whatever," as if dismissing Mia entirely. But Mia wasn't dismissed. That evening, as she lay in bed replaying the moment in her mind, she realized something important. Standing up to the girl hadn't made things worse, it had made her feel stronger. Sure, the girl laughed it off, but Mia had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She'd shown her that she wasn't going to back down anymore. Determined to reclaim her power, Mia decided it was time to take action. The next morning, she confided in Mr. Alvarez, the kind-hearted art teacher who had always encouraged her creativity. He listened patiently as she recounted the months of harassment, his expression growing more serious with each word. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Let me tell you something, Mia," he began, his voice soft but steady. "When I was your age, I dealt with bullies too. Kids used to make fun of my accent because my family had just moved here from another country. At first, I let it get to me. I thought maybe they were right, that I didn't belong. But then I realized something. Their words only had power if I gave it to them. He paused, looking directly at Mia, standing. Up isn't about fighting back. It's about finding your voice. And sometimes it means showing people that you won't be pushed around anymore. Mia nodded slowly, absorbing his words. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't something she had to face alone. Inspired by Mr. Alvarez's advice, Mia joined the school newspaper club. She'd never considered writing before, but now it seemed like the perfect way to fight back, not with fists, but with words. The club advisor, Mrs. Patel, welcomed her warmly and encouraged her to share her story. At first, Mia hesitated. Writing about her experiences felt terrifying, like opening old wounds and exposing them to the world. But as she put pen to paper, she found that the act of writing helped heal those wounds in a way she hadn't expected. Through the newspaper club, Mia also met Samira, a witty and outspoken freshman who quickly became her ally. Together, they brainstormed ideas for articles that would expose the toxic culture of bullying at Willow Creek. They interviewed other students who had faced similar treatment, giving them a chance to speak out anonymously. Some were hesitant at first, afraid of retaliation, but others opened up eagerly, grateful to finally have a platform. Meanwhile, Mia started attending self-defense classes at the community center. Not because she planned to physically fight the girl who bullied her, but because she wanted to feel empowered and prepared for anything. The instructor, a calm yet commanding woman named Lisa, taught her techniques to protect herself while emphasizing the importance of using them responsibly. "Don't need to throw the first punch," Lisa told her during one session. "But knowing you can defend yourself changes the way you carry yourself. Confidence is your greatest weapon." As weeks passed, Mia transformed not just physically, but emotionally. She walked taller, spoke louder, and refused to let fear dictate her actions. Word spread among the student body that Mia Harper wasn't backing down anymore. People started noticing her in ways they hadn't before. Some cheered her on quietly, while others whispered behind her back, wondering what she was planning next. One afternoon, as Mia worked on an article for the school newspaper, Samira leaned over and grinned. "You know," she said, "you're kinda inspiring." Mia raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Me? Inspiring?" "Yeah," Samira replied. "You stood up when most people would have stayed quiet. That takes guts." For the first time in months, Mia smiled a real, genuine smile. It wasn't victory yet, but it was progress. And for now, that was enough. Mia's transformation didn't happen overnight. It was slow, like the first rays of sunlight creeping over the horizon after a long, dark night. But every small step she took brought her closer to becoming someone she could be proud of, someone who refused to shrink under the weight of fear or cruelty. The school newspaper became Mia's sanctuary. Every Thursday afternoon, she and Samira would meet in the cramped little office tucked away in the corner of the school library. The room smelled faintly of old paper and ink, but it felt safe, a place where they could talk freely without worrying about being overheard. Together, they pored over notes, drafted articles, and debated headlines until their hands cramped from writing and their voices grew hoarse. Their biggest project was an expose on bullying at Willow Creek Middle School. They called it Asterisk, the Cost of Cruelty. The title came to them late one evening when Mia was sketching in her notebook during a brainstorming session. She had drawn a picture of a cracked mirror surrounded by jagged shards, each piece reflecting a different face, some angry, some scared, some indifferent. When Samira saw it, she pointed to the drawing and said, "That's it. That's what we're trying to say. Bullying doesn't just hurt the person being bullied, it breaks everyone involved." So they set out to tell those stories. They interviewed students who had been teased for wearing hand-me-down clothes, mocked for their accents, or excluded from group projects simply because they weren't part of the right crowd. Some were hesitant to speak up, worried that sharing their experiences might make things worse. But Mia reassured them, promising that their identities would remain anonymous unless they chose otherwise. Slowly, trust began to build, and stories poured in. One boy talked about how he stopped bringing lunch to school after kids laughed at his peanut butter sandwiches. A girl described how she quit the soccer team because teammates kept telling her she wasn't good enough. Another student admitted that he avoided using the bathroom at school altogether because he was tired of being shoved into stalls or having water flicked at him. Each story was different, yet they all shared a common thread: pain caused by thoughtless words and actions. As Mia listened to these accounts, she realized something important. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about creating a space where people felt seen and heard, a place where no one had to suffer in silence. Writing the article gave her purpose, and for the first time in months, she felt like she was making a difference. But standing up wasn't just about words on paper. Mia knew she needed to lead by example, showing others that change was possible. That's why she kept going to self-defense classes, even though she sometimes struggled to keep up. At first, she'd been nervous about walking into the community center gym, surrounded by people who seemed so confident and capable. But Lisa, the instructor, quickly put her at ease. "You don't have to be perfect," Lisa told her during one session. "Just focus on learning. Every punch you throw, every block you master, it's not just about protecting yourself physically. It's about proving to yourself that you're stronger than you think." Mia took those words to heart. Over time, she noticed subtle changes in herself. Her posture improved. She stood taller, shoulders back instead of hunched forward. Her movements became more deliberate, less tentative. Even her voice carried a newfound authority when she spoke. Teachers started calling on her in class more often, impressed by how clearly she articulated her thoughts. And while the girl who bullied her still occasionally shot her dirty looks in the hallway, Mia found herself meeting those glares with steady, unflinching stares of her own. Word spread among the student body about what Mia was doing. Some kids whispered behind her back, calling her brave or crazy depending on their perspective. Others openly supported her, slipping her encouraging notes or giving her thumbs up in the hallways. One day, as Mia walked to her locker, she overheard two girls talking nearby. "Did you see her article?" one asked. "It's kinda inspiring." "I know," the other replied. "I didn't realize how many people go through that stuff. Makes me feel bad for laughing along sometimes." Hearing those words made Mia's chest swell with pride, not because she wanted recognition, but because she knew she was planting seeds of awareness. If even one person thought twice before joining in on a cruel joke, then all her efforts were worth it. Of course, not everyone was supportive. The girl who had tormented Mia continued to lash out, perhaps sensing that her power over Mia was slipping away. During lunch one day, she leaned across the table in the cafeteria and sneered. "You really think anyone cares about your little crusade? You're wasting your time." Mia didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she smiled a calm, confident smile and said, "Maybe, but at least I'm doing something. What about you?" The girl blinked, caught off guard. For a moment, she looked almost uncertain. Then she scowled and turned away, muttering something under her breath. But Mia noticed the hesitation in her eyes, the brief flicker of doubt. It was proof that her strategy was working. Standing up to bullies wasn't about winning arguments or proving superiority. It was about showing them that their words and actions didn't define her. By the end of the semester, Mia had become a quiet force within the school. She wasn't loud or flashy, but her presence was undeniable. Kids who once ignored her now sought her out for advice or encouragement. Teachers praised her leadership skills, recommending her for opportunities she never would have considered before. Even Principal Davis pulled her aside one afternoon to commend her for her work on the anti-bullying campaign. "You're setting an example for everyone here," he said, his tone sincere. "Keep it up." Mia nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't naive enough to believe that bullying would disappear entirely. It was too deeply ingrained in the culture of middle school life. But she also knew that progress was possible. Change didn't happen all at once. It happened in small, steady increments, like drops of water carving paths through stone dot as she walked home that evening. The sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk, Mia allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about how far she'd come since that humiliating day in the cafeteria, when the girl had pointed a finger at her and declared she didn't belong. Back then, she'd felt powerless, invisible. Now, she carried herself with a quiet strength that commanded respect. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The air was thick with tension on that chilly Friday afternoon, the kind of tension that makes your palms sweat and your heart race, even if you're not directly involved. For Mia, it felt like the entire school was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Word had spread quickly, whispers in hallways, texts buzzing under desks, eyes darting toward her whenever she passed by. Everyone knew something big was coming. It started innocently enough. Mia had been heading to her locker after last period, eager to grab her books and get out of the building. The weekend stretched ahead of her like a blank canvas, and she planned to spend it working on sketches for the next issue of the school newspaper. But as she turned the corner near the auditorium, she saw her tormentor leaning casually against the lockers, flanked by her usual group of followers. Their laughter echoed off the walls, sharp and biting. Mia's stomach tightened, but she kept walking. She told herself to stay calm, to focus on getting to her locker and leaving without incident. But just as she reached for the handle, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could react, the girl stepped into her path, blocking her way. "Still pretending you're tough now?" The girl sneered, jabbing a finger into Mia's chest. Her voice dripped with mockery, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. For a split second, Mia froze. Memories of all the time she'd stood there silently, letting this girl walk all over her, flashed through her mind. But then something inside her shifted. This wasn't the same Mia who had cowered in fear months ago. This was the Mia who had written articles exposing the truth about bullying, who had faced down doubters in self-defense class, who had learned to stand tall no matter how hard the world tried to push her down. Instead of backing away, Mia stepped forward, closing the gap between them. She looked the girl straight in the eye, her gaze steady and unflinching. "I'm not pretending," she said, her voice clear and strong. "And if you keep treating people like garbage, sooner or later, you'll realize how lonely it is at the top." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and undeniable. The girl faltered, clearly caught off guard. Her followers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do. For once, the tide seemed to be turning not in favor of cruelty, but in favor of courage. Before anything else could happen, Principal Davis appeared, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure in the hallway. He must have been alerted by someone, probably Samira, who had promised to keep an eye out for trouble. Without hesitation, he addressed both girls sternly, warning the bully that further incidents would result in suspension. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was a start. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of the confrontation, replaying every word, every glance, every moment of tension. Part of her wondered if she should have said more or less. Had she crossed a line? Would things escalate even further? But another part of her, the stronger, braver part, knew she'd done the right thing. She hadn't backed down. She hadn't let fear dictate her actions. And that meant something. Over the weekend, Mia threw herself into finishing the expose for the school newspaper. She and Samira worked late into the night, fine-tuning sentences, choosing impactful quotes, and designing layouts that would grab readers' attention. They titled the article, "The Cost of Cruelty," a phrase that resonated deeply with both of them. When they finally hit print early Monday morning, exhaustion mingled with excitement bubbled inside them. This was it, the moment they'd been working toward. When the paper hit the stands later that week, the reaction was immediate. Students gathered around bulletin boards and cafeteria tables, flipping through pages and whispering among themselves. Some nodded thoughtfully, while others looked uncomfortable, as though seeing their own behavior reflected back at them. Teachers glanced up from grading papers to read snippets aloud, sparking conversations about kindness and accountability. Even parents got involved, calling the school to praise the article or ask why such issues hadn't been addressed sooner. Not everyone responded positively, of course. A few kids rolled their eyes, muttering that Mia was making too big a deal out of nothing. One boy even crumpled up a copy of the paper and tossed it into the trash, earning a chorus of disapproving groans from classmates. But for the most part, the response was overwhelmingly supportive. Kids who had never spoken to Mia before stopped her in the halls to thank her. "You're really brave," one girl said shyly. Another simply gave her a thumbs up, which felt like a small victory in itself. As for the girl who had bullied her, things began to shift. She didn't stop entirely, at least not right away, but her confidence wavered. Instead of strutting through the hallways like she owned the place, she walked with her head slightly lowered, avoiding eye contact. Her followers drifted away, seeking new alliances or deciding they didn't want to be associated with someone whose reputation was crumbling. Rumors circulated that she was struggling to keep friends outside of school too, though Mia tried not to dwell on that. Revenge wasn't the goal. Change was. One afternoon, during study hall, Mia noticed the girl sitting alone at a table near the window. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the room. There was no malice in the girl's expression this time, just a flicker of something softer, almost vulnerable. Mia looked away quickly, unsure of what to make of it. Was it regret, resignation, or just exhaustion from carrying the weight of so much cruelty? Later that week, the school announced plans to implement anti-bullying workshops and peer mentoring programs. Principal Davis credited the newspaper article for sparking the initiative, praising Mia and Samira publicly during an assembly. As Mia stood on stage accepting a certificate of appreciation, she scanned the audience. Faces blurred together, but she could feel the energy in the room, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and maybe even hope. Still, Mia knew the fight wasn't over. Changing a culture took time, effort, and persistence. There would always be challenges, setbacks, moments when it felt like progress was slipping through her fingers. But standing there, bathed in the soft glow of the auditorium lights, she allowed herself a rare moment of pride. She had faced her fears, found her voice, and inspired others to do the same. That wasn't just growth, it was triumph. As she stepped off the stage, Samira greeted her with a grin. "Told you you're inspiring," she said, nudging Mia playfully. Mia laughed, shaking her head. "Maybe, but we're not done yet." "Nope," Samira agreed, "not even close." And with that, they walked out of the auditorium side by side, ready to face whatever came next. By spring, the atmosphere at Willow Creek Middle School had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. The anti-bullying workshops Mia and Samira had inspired were in full swing, and students were starting to talk openly about kindness, empathy, and standing up for one another. Posters with slogans like "Be the Change" and "Kindness Starts With You" lined the hallways, their bright colors a constant reminder of the new tone being set. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, whispered arguments, and lingering cliques, but progress was undeniable. For Mia, life felt different too. She was no longer the quiet girl who blended into the background. People noticed her now not because she sought attention, but because she carried herself differently. Her shoulders were squared, her steps confident, and her voice steady when she spoke. Kids who once ignored her now approached her with questions or compliments, eager to connect with someone they saw as brave. Teachers praised her leadership skills, recommending her for opportunities she never would have considered before. Even Principal Davis pulled her aside one afternoon to commend her for her work on the anti-bullying campaign. "You're setting an example for everyone here," he said, his tone sincere. "Keep it up." Mia nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't naive enough to believe that bullying would disappear entirely. It was too deeply ingrained in the culture of middle school life. But she also knew that progress was possible. Change didn't happen all at once. It happened in small, steady increments, like drops of water carving paths through stone. The girl who had tormented her wasn't exempt from these changes either. After multiple complaints from parents and students, she was required to attend counseling sessions and perform community service. While she never publicly apologized, Mia noticed a shift in her demeanor. There was less arrogance in her stride, more hesitation in her gaze. Occasionally, their eyes would meet in the hallway, and instead of hostility, there was something softer, a flicker of understanding, maybe even regret. Mia didn't hold on to bitterness. She knew forgiveness wasn't hers to give. That was between the girl and those she had hurt. But seeing her struggle weighed down by the consequences of her actions gave Mia a sense of closure. On the last day of 8th grade, the school held its annual awards ceremony. Parents filled the auditorium, clutching bouquets of flowers and cameras, while students fidgeted nervously in their seats. When Principal Davis called Mia's name to present the Spirit of Leadership Award, the room erupted into applause. As she made her way to the stage, she scanned the crowd, her heart swelling with gratitude. Her dad sat near the front, clapping proudly, while her mom wiped tears from her eyes. Samira gave her a thumbs up from the back row, grinning ear to ear. Standing at the podium, Mia took a deep breath. This was her chance to say something meaningful, to remind everyone how far they'd come and how much farther they could go. She gripped the microphone tightly and began to speak. "When I first started writing about bullying," she said, her voice trembling slightly at first, "I didn't think anyone would listen. I thought maybe it was just me ranting into the void. But then people started sharing their stories, and I realized something important. None of us are alone. We all carry scars, big or small, and we all have the power to heal them, not just for ourselves, but for each other." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent except for the faint rustle of programs being folded and unfolded. "Standing up to bullies isn't just about fighting back," she continued. "It's about creating a world where bullying doesn't have room to grow. Where kindness is louder than cruelty, where courage is stronger than fear. That starts with us, with every choice we make, every word we say, every hand we extend to someone who's struggling." When she finished speaking, the audience erupted into cheers. Some kids stood up, clapping wildly, while others wiped away tears. Mia stepped back from the podium, her cheeks flushed but her spirit soaring. For the first time in her life, she truly felt seen not as the quiet girl in the corner, but as someone who mattered. That evening, as Mia packed up her locker for the summer, she reflected on everything that had happened over the past year. She thought about the days she'd spent hiding in the library, sketching pictures to escape reality. She thought about the humiliation of being singled out in the cafeteria, the sting of cruel notes slipped into her locker, the ache of feeling invisible. And she thought about the moment she decided to raise her fist, not in anger, but in defiance, her transformation hadn't been easy. There were nights when doubt crept in, whispering that she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, brave enough. But every time she wanted to give up, she reminded herself why she started. Every sketch she drew, every article she wrote, every punch she threw in self-defense class, it was all part of proving to herself that she was capable of more than she ever imagined. As she closed her locker for the final time, Mia smiled. She wasn't the same person who had walked through those doors 9 months ago. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. High school loomed on the horizon, full of unknowns, but Mia no longer feared the future. She had learned that standing up for yourself wasn't just about defeating your bully. It was about becoming the person you were always meant to be. On the drive home, her dad glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You did good, kiddo," he said, his voice thick with pride. "Real good." Mia nodded, gazing out the window at the sun setting behind the hills. The sky blazed orange and pink, painting the world in warm hues. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she also knew she had the strength to handle whatever came next. And as the car rolled down the quiet streets of Willow Creek, Mia allowed herself to dream not just of the future, but of the endless possibilities waiting for her beyond the horizon.